And hello and welcome to episode 43 of the Tom Retro Chronicle, the awesome, exciting, and always entertaining podcast here on YouTube that I host usually every so often. Alright, and I am taping this on a very cool, quiet evening here in Fargo, North Dakota. It's almost about around 11:20 p.m. here as I am recording this. It could be quite possibly I could be doing this through pretty much recording this, recording, publishing, and then publishing this on YouTube by sometime later in the early morning hours and through the 6th of September. So, a little bit of a day recap that I've had. It's been kind of a crazy day. Pretty crazy day. Pretty much I had to get up against my will. Basically, I didn't really sleep all that well. Pretty much I got about at least a good 2 to 4 hours of sleep, which isn't really that good, but pretty much once I got out of bed, pretty much got something to eat for breakfast and had a little bit of some caffeine in me, pretty much I was able to function actually pretty well. Actually a lot better than I thought it would be, because pretty much I thought, okay, if I can't sleep this well, there is possibly no reason why I should be not sleepy for most of my shift, which was a 9 to 5 shift at work. But for some reason, I was actually pretty well awake during most of the shift. So it was pretty cool. Yeah. Then pretty much after that, pretty much I got home, pretty much showered, then went to go see a friend who worked at a Smiling Moose Deli restaurant, which is apparently a pretty big restaurant chain of deli restaurant around the country. So I had that. The first time being there, it was actually pretty cool. It was actually quite good too. I believe I had like the Southern Bayou sandwich with Doritos and Coke. So it was actually pretty good. Not bad price for it either. In terms of a foot long, it was actually pretty good. So can't complain all that much. Then I finished my last load of laundry about a good 20 minutes ago as I'm recording this. But yeah, it wasn't that bad. Alright, so pretty much as I said before on Monday, I believe, pretty much I would be talking about the Packers and Seahawks game that transpired last night, and talk about some of the things that went right for the Packers and some of the things that went wrong. Unfortunately, it was pretty much mostly wrong for the Pack. Yeah, just basically a little recap of what happened in the game. Then I'll talk a little bit about my recent blog post on my WordPress account, which was pretty much all about how I would change the NFL. Let's talk a little bit about that, but I can always just post a link on the video if you want to take a look at it. So yeah. Then I'll probably talk a little bit of some Major League Baseball scores that are going on as of right now. as we're getting into the last month of the regular season in Major League Baseball. So, yeah. Apparently, I'm watching some movie called Finding, or I think it might have been Breaking Harvard or something. Some Tom Green movie. Interesting movie, so say the least. But all right, let's talk about the Packers and Seahawks game that took place on NBC last night as NBC's opening night game. And pretty much coming into this game, I thought the Packers actually had a pretty good shot of the Eagles game. I mean, pretty much I fell into the trap of the defense looking pretty good, and certainly the defense actually looked not that bad, to be honest, but pretty much, and certainly most people will think that the defense should be the blame, but it's also somewhat the offense's fault. Essentially, pretty much the Packers' running attack was basically this. James Starks pretty much ran the ball for 7 times for 37 yards, which is about 5.3 yards per carry. And then Eddie Lacy would run the ball 12 times for 34 yards, which is a 2.8 yards per carry, which is pretty bad. So essentially, pretty much the lack of a running game pretty much doomed the Packers pretty much. Essentially, pretty much robbed them from pretty much getting anywhere close to being where they wanted to be. And essentially, the game itself was just essentially the time of possession was pretty much dominated by the Seahawks. The Seahawks here basically had 33 minutes and 20 seconds of possession, which means that pretty much the Packers had 26 minutes of almost 27 minutes worth of possession time. And pretty much so pretty much all facets of the game pretty much were kind of pretty much out of sync. Certainly the special teams was also not that great as well. Pretty much the kickoff returns were pretty much Micah Hyde pretty much had 2 returns for an average of 24.5 yards. The longest was 28, and DeJuan Harris had 2 returns for a long yardage of 21. And Tim Massey pretty much was the big player for the Packers. Pretty much had 4 punts with an average of 38.2 yards per punt. The longest was from 57 yards, and there was only 1 punt that landed inside the 20-yard line. Pretty much looking at Aaron Rodgers' numbers, he finished off the night with 23 completions out of 33 attempts. And pretty much his yards passing total was at 189 with a touchdown and a interception. In the game, Randall Cobb being the only Packer scoring the touchdown on the on Aaron Rodgers' pass. John Kuhn pretty much scored the only other touchdown that the Packers would have, and then Mason Crosby hit a field goal from 23 yards. And basically, and the Packers would miss. I'm trying to remember what they did. Like, I think they pretty much they failed a 2-point conversion attempt. Pretty much during the third or the fourth quarter. So pretty much. So it. So pretty much. So pretty much, I watched most of the game. Pretty much, the turning point for me was pretty much once, pretty much Sherrod recovers the fumble and basically gives Seattle the safety. And then pretty much later on, Marshawn Lynch runs in for a touchdown and brings the score to a 29-10 lead. And pretty much I stopped really watching the game after that score. It was kind of it wasn't that pretty of a game, to be honest. It was a bluff. So do I pretty much discredit the Seahawks? I mean, they're the reason why the Seahawks are the world champs. I mean, they pretty much single-handedly destroyed one of the best offensive teams in NFL history, arguably, in Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. So, yeah. Let's see. Let's look at Russell Wilson's numbers here. Wilson had 19 completions out of 28 for 191 yards for 2 touchdowns. Probably the biggest player was Marshawn Lynch, who ran the ball 20 times for 110 yards for 2 touchdowns. And if you're keeping track, that is a 5.5 yards per carry mark, which is pretty much better than most of what the Packers could accomplish there. And then Ricardo Lockett and Derek Coleman scoring the only receiving touchdowns for the Seahawks during the game. And yeah. And pretty much Earl Thomas pretty much was the least valuable player for the Seahawks, during the game, pretty much getting 2 punt returns for an average of 1.5 yards per punt, and the longest one was for 3 yards. So yeah. So pretty much you have to give credit where credit is due for the Seahawks. Pretty much they pretty much dominated the game, pretty much dominated the Packers, pretty much turned the Packers into their own, pretty much turned them into the team that the Seahawks wanted them to be, basically a team that couldn't run the ball, pretty much had to pass the ball and pretty much force the Packers into tough third and long situations and then give the ball to them. And yeah, so not really much else that I really wanted to say about this game. It was a bad game. A bad game for a Packers fan. That's all. But what can you do? But See, looking at week 2, their next opponents will be they will be at home against the New York Jets on the 14th, and that game will be on CBS. So hopefully the Packers can try to get back to the 500 mark with a win against the Jets. Alright, so take a look at the other thing that I was wanting to talk about. Let's see here. Looking at... Alright, so pretty much during most of the duration of the game, pretty much I decided to do a blog post about my take on where the Packers or the National Football League is standing, and pretty much giving my take on pretty much how I would fix the league and turn it into something that looked good to me. And pretty much some of the big things I pretty much talked about was pretty much tried to fix the league policy. Pretty much the conduct. I decided to declare that the first offense that a player commits, they would get suspended for 8 games and pay a $500,000 fine. The second offense would be a suspension of 16 games instead of a year, with a quarter yearly salary fine. So that would be quite an interesting thing there, because if you're like a player that earns $4 million a year, then that would be basically a $1 million fine. And then your third offense is basically you get banned. You get banned from the league. You basically get a contract nullification, and pretty much the rest is there. Pretty much what I also called the Jimmy Irsay rule, pretty much applied for owners, pretty much the higher up people. So pretty much I thought to myself, pretty much what could pretty much hurt an NFL executive, owner, coach, trainer than pretty much anything else. Pretty much the first offense that someone in that position of power commits, they basically get suspended for 8 games, banned from visiting team facilities, contact for team. The offense, suspension of 16 games, reduction of team budget, reduction of salary cap of team, no contact with team for 16 games. The third offense is get banned from the league, reduce draft picks, reduce team budget, reduce league shared revenue, and yeah. I guess some of the biggest thing that I did want to talk about was making the playoff system a bit better. Pretty much the league has been talking about creating a 16-team playoff with basically 8 teams making up each of the 2 conferences, pretty much. And basically my thoughts of the system was that, okay, you can win the division, but you don't necessarily get a guaranteed home field advantage spot in the playoffs. So pretty much looking at the standings um, for the NFC, for example, um, um, pretty much the number one seed would be the Seattle Seahawks by far. The second would be the San Francisco 49ers. And pretty much the third would be the Carolina Panthers. Um, so certainly pretty much um, the tiebreakers was the tiebreaker would be basically if they have the same conference record, same division record, or same division record, same conference record, same non-conference record, and pretty much the biggest dealio will be the point differential. And pretty much the 49ers would win out the point differential battle, even though that pretty much the Panthers and the 49ers basically had the same division, conference, and non-conference record last season. Then number 4 would be New Orleans, 5 Philadelphia, 6 Arizona Cardinals, 7 Dallas Cowboys, and 8 the Green Bay Packers. So it may seem a bit unjust just because I'm sure a lot of people would probably say if you win division, you basically should get a top spot in the playoffs. But pretty much the whole 8-7-1 2013 Green Bay Packers is quite a bit of a different story altogether. And basically here's the reason why. Pretty much the Cardinals finished off with a 10-6 record. Now, pretty much in most divisions that isn't the NFC West, pretty much the Arizona Cardinals would get in to the playoffs pretty much lickety split. So yeah. And pretty much my whole playoff system would be the first round basically would have 4 games on Saturday and Sunday, with the 4 television partners getting getting 2 of each games. Like ESPN would get 2 games, NBC would get 2 games, CBS would get 2 games, and Fox would get 2 games, and then pretty much the second round would basically be the same, would stay the same. Pretty much you get 2 divisional games on Saturday, and then 2 divisional games on Sunday, and then Fox and CBS would basically host those, would have the broadcasting rights to those games, and then pretty much the rest is straightforward once you get to the Super Bowl. But it's actually a pretty good read, I think. I know it took me at least a good 4 hours to write it up, so if you like it, feel free to give me a like on WordPress. So, yeah. And I'll probably, once again, put on link on this video here once I finish recording this. So okay, so let's take a look at some MLB scores that are going on right now. Starting off first with the Red Sox playing at home against the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox would go on to win 9-8 in 10 innings. And looking at some current live scores that are going up right now, the Astros are up 4-3 against the Athletics. Then the D-backs are down by a run against the Dodgers 2-1. That game is in the middle of the 8th inning. The Pirates and Cubs are currently at the top of the 7th inning, That game is currently being suspended due to rain, and that game will resume tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon. The Indians would beat the White Sox 2-1. Let's see here. The Royals would get a one-run victory against the Yankees, landing Michael Pineda his 4th loss of the season, and James Shields would get his 13th win of the season. So, pretty good season for Shields. So, yeah. Let's see here. A lot of extra inning contests here tonight. The Phillies would get a one-run victory against the Nationals, 9-8 in 11 innings. And the game that has just gone final, the Giants beat the Tigers 8-2. So pretty much the continuing downfall of the Detroit Tigers continues. Certainly a World Series rematch of the 2012 Fall Classic there. Pretty interesting there. The Braves would get demolished by the Marlins, 11-3. Cozart would get his 13th win, and Harang would get his 10th loss of the season. The Rays would beat the Orioles 3-0. The Mets would, in a very heavily scoring contest, would win 14-5. So certainly the Mets scored 2 touchdowns, and the Reds would score a field goal and a safety, if that's how it works. So Bartolo Colon would get his 13th win this season out of 11 losses there. The Mariners would beat the Texas Rangers 7-5. Iwakuma gets his 14th win of the season. The Angels would beat the Twins 7-6 in 10 innings. Let's see here. In a very interesting divisional series, the Brewers would beat the Cardinals 6-2. Lackey would get his 9th loss of the season. The Rockies would go on to win 3-0 against the Padres of San Diego. And so, yeah, there we go. Okay, so pretty much in terms of new episode, I'm not going to do one sometime. Probably it's looking like next week will be probably the best time to do it. Probably sometime next Friday, maybe, perhaps, I don't know, maybe. We shall see how it goes. So, I don't think there's really anything else I really need to mention. So yeah, I will probably see you all next weekend. Feel free to give me a like or a dislike or a good comment or a bad comment on my video. And thank you for listening. I shall see you all later.